Handwriting. We all know it's important, but why? When should we be worried about our kids' handwriting? Today, we've got Kelli Fetter of Handwriting Solutions. She is going to answer so many different questions for us. She works with kids with dyslexia, dysgraphia, ADHD, and kids who just need a boost in general. We are going to hit on all those topics and more, including the all-important question of, is cursive really necessary today? So if you're interested in that one, stick around to the end. And I've already begun questioning the health of my own pencil grip. So Kelli, come on up. Let's get started. I'm excited to have you here. Could you just let us know a little bit about you and what you do to help families?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me again. So basically what we do at Handwriting Solutions is we provide one-on-one tutoring, and that's in person or virtual. And we, like you said, we work with kids with who just need a boost. So maybe your child just needs some extra practice and explicit instruction, or maybe your child has dysgraphia or dyslexia or ADHD. And, we complete the assessment. We offer individualized, explicit tutoring to these children that need more, that are not maybe appropriate for OT services or are not getting the help that they need in school. And so we're able to address that in a very rigorous and evidence-based way, which is super exciting and did not exist when my daughter needed the service so bad. So we're just excited. Yeah.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned it, because when you have your own kids, you start to see these little things, these little quirks with each kid, and not every kid is different. We all know this, but sometimes you're like, that's not like the other kid, but is that okay? Is that normal? So I guess my first question would be why is handwriting important? And maybe when should we start to head scratch and go, do we need more support here?
Right. So when I mentioned my daughter, I'll give a little backstory first, because I think that will make sense to a lot of people. So my daughter is 10 now, but when she was in kindergarten, we started seeing signs of dyslexia and dysgraphia. At that point, I honestly, even as a pediatric OT, was not familiar with dysgraphia. So
Could you give us the definition?
Yes, I can actually. Yeah, that's a great point. So when you think about learning differences and learning disabilities, it's an umbrella, and there are three parts underneath that umbrella. And so there is dyslexia, which is the learning difference in reading. And then there is dysgraphia, which is the learning difference in writing. So written expression, and then the actual handwriting. And then the third one is dyscalculia, which is the learning difference in math. So it is an actual diagnostic measure, or I should say diagnosis that children can receive, because there are certain criteria that need to be met. So not every kid that has messy handwriting has dysgraphia, but there were some key signs that she was showing that, hey, there is something more going on here. And essentially, as with all of our neurodivergent kiddos, their brains are just learning it differently. They need a different way to learn it, a different way to approach it. So, we were starting to pick up on these signs. And with the dyslexia piece, there are programs out there. There are people who address this. That was the easy part for me. The dysgraphia piece, I'm like, well, who does this? Who helps with this? And even as a pediatric OT, I was like, I don't know. So I went and deep dove the research, took all the trainings that I could get, read all the books. And I thought, okay, we need somebody out here who is specializing in handwriting, who is specializing in working with these kids with dyslexia and dysgraphia that need that. So that's kind of how Handwriting Solutions was born. But, with that said, you don't have to have a diagnosis to need that tutoring as well. So when I hear parents say, does my child need this? Well, obviously messy handwriting is one big red flag, right? But it doesn't always have to be that too. Maybe your child has beautiful handwriting, but they're having a hard time getting their thoughts out onto paper. Okay, that's a red flag. We need to figure that out. Maybe it's their pencil grasp that is awkward, uncomfortable, causes pain and discomfort. Maybe they're writing too big, too small. Their pencil control is not great, meaning that their letters are all over the paper. They're not using the margins appropriately. Their formation, a big sign that I like to ask parents is, does it feel like they're drawing their letters rather than explicitly, fluidly, automatically writing them? That's what we want them to do. But if they're drawing the letter, that's a sign. And then for my daughter and for so many children, are they frustrated with writing? Are they ripping that paper up? And usually parents are like, yep, that's where we're at. So those are kind of all those like little red flags that they can start to look for and think, okay, we need to work on this because, and I don't mean to go too far into this, but we know that writing is a key part of literacy, and we forget about that. It's not just reading, it's writing too. Reading is the decoding and the taking the information in, and then writing is the encoding and getting that information out. So it's essential for literacy.
Super huge. Okay, I love that. So this almost feels like a little bit of a checklist. So there's the, I love that. I've never heard anybody describe it like that, but drawing their letters versus like an intentional formation of letters. Pencil graph, does it hurt? Does their hand get really like, maybe irrationally tired quicker? Would that be another way to put that? If
Absolutely.
It's kind of uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And then also the idea of just getting to that frustration point of like, I cannot do this. I don't want to do this anymore. That sort of thing. I love that. So if parents have kind of noticed this, and I would say for a lot of the teachers watching, many of the people who are watching this are homeschoolers or are teachers or online teachers who happen to be homeschooling. So we've got all sorts of, avenues that this looks. I mean, like this morning, I was writing with our 4 kids who we homeschool, and, thankfully we had a good writing day, but sometimes it's not so good. So I really feel that. I know as a classroom teacher, I saw this as well. Writing was one of those subjects that requires a lot of the kid and of the teacher. And if somebody's not putting in that attention, that focus, something's going to be off. And I think when we can recognize that these needs are there, that's going to make it's just going to level up the whole process. And then same thing for online teachers. When we have that good rapport with families and the families say, hey, they couldn't make it through their homework, or their homework is taped together because we got to that frustration point and the paper was ripped. Great. Thank you for letting me know. Let's talk a little bit more about how we can help them. So this is super applicable for so many areas of education, wherever you find yourself. So what are some of the first steps that I know you offer a free 15-minute consultation, which is super generous. I love that. You guys can find a link down there to get in touch with Kelli. But what are some of the things that you suggest to families that they would first kind of start intervening with?
Sure. So I love that you say that, yes, there are so many people that might have eyeballs on this child. And so, yeah, it's like, okay, well, now we realize that there is a barrier, there's something going on that's hindering this child. So yes, definitely the consultation is great, just because we can talk through and dig a little bit deeper to figure out what's going on. And the reason why we dig deeper is because I think of handwriting as a pyramid, and you have to build up those foundational skills before you get to this fluent writing that's at the top. That's our goal. We want our child to be able to fluently write and or use accommodations to get their thoughts out. But we have to start at that foundation first. Do they have any lagging skills? Maybe their fine motor skills, their coordination, their posture. Can they even maintain an upright posture in the chair? How does their core strength look? How's their visual skills? Because visual perceptual skills play a big part in handwriting as well. How are their cognitive skills, their executive function, their attention. So as you said, so much goes into writing that we just don't think about because we do it so automatically. But there's so much information. If they're taking notes in class, they're having to listen to the teacher in a possibly loud or busy environment, visually, auditorily. They're having to figure out what the teacher is talking about. So processing all of that, but also how do I hear what they're saying, translate that into letters that make a word. So now I have to spell. And so there's so many, what they call the orthographic loop, which essentially means that we're taking that sound in, we're turning that sound into a letter, turning the letter into a word to get that output. That's a lot going on cognitively and physically and sensory motor and all of that. So we're going to look at those foundation skills first and build those up while we're also providing that explicit handwriting instruction too. So what parents and teachers can do is they can start kind of problem solving. Like, what are those lagging skills that are missing? How does this child look when they're writing? What does that feel like for that child? Where are they emotionally? And then slowly start peeling back those layers and figuring out where they can help.
That's huge. That's huge. Gosh, there's so much there to unpack. I love the idea of peeling back layers. And again, with 4 kids, I've seen kind of a little bit of a range here. We've got a kid who loves it and taught herself cursive. Another kid who's like, meh, I'll get through it. My handwriting might look like crap, but on the paper and you understand it, right? Good. Okay, bye. And then the next one who wants it to be perfect. And the next one who's in preschool. And we are peeling back those layers. And yeah, thank goodness I've had 4 rounds of practice now with teaching like phonics. I mean, letter recognition, upper and lowercase. I mean, when we really get down to what is a letter, and we're trying to teach them, and we get into reversals, BD, PQ reversals, all that fun stuff, which is completely normal, by the way. And does require a little bit of extra practice sometimes, but there are some really common instances of that. The idea of peeling back those layers and saying, hey, maybe you don't need to write 8 sentences. Let's try 4 today. Let's see if we can get 4 looking real good. And then maybe we'll bump it up to 5 next week. But this week, let's just stick with 4. And kind of having the okay of everyone involved to say, hey, we may just need to kind of lower the quantity here in order to get the quality that we're looking for and really build up those skills. So whether that be, fine motor or whatever. That's awesome. I love it. I have a lot of questions in terms of, everybody's going to be asking, what about a pencil grip? What about a rubber band? Your Instagram is fantastic, by the way. If you're not following Kelli, is it Handwriting Solutions? You've got great visuals of little kind of bracelets they look like with the pencil tip being drawn back toward the wrist, that sort of thing. What are some of those kind of physical manual type tools that people could use?
Yeah,
if handwriting grip, if pencil grip is the issue.
Absolutely. So that's one of those areas that I like to do both. So I like to remediate because, again, if they're struggling with pencil grasp, that's a red flag. Something's going on here. Do we have weak hands? Is it a coordination thing? Is it a core stability thing? Let's figure that out. Let's remediate that. But let's also give them a pencil grip that they can use in the meantime while we're building up those lagging skills. And there are so many grips out there. I love Amazon has this little variety pack that I recommend to most parents, especially my virtual parents who maybe aren't coming into the office and we can trial them. They can trial that at home. I think it's $10 or $12 and they can trial which pencil grip and we can work with them on that. Because essentially you want the thumb, the index, and the middle finger to be the working fingers. So they're going to be the movers. And then we want that pinky and ring finger to be the stabilizers. But in order to get that takes a lot of skill. That takes some in-hand manipulation skill and coordination and strength and all of this. So that's where those pencil grips can really come into play to get them in that right position. But you still have to build up that skill to be able to effectively use that grip as well.
Totally. Oh my gosh, I love it. I'm from Virginia, but I live in South America. And for one of our kids, we were looking for a pencil grip. Couldn't find one. I don't know why they weren't in any of the stores. And, I'm used to those kind of it looks like somebody slapped a bunch of Play-Doh on a pencil and, that's what they grab onto. But the ones that we found actually were a loop for the ring finger, I guess. And then these working fingers were the ones that are in funnels, which my daughter, when she started using it, she goes, this feels really weird. And then later she goes, oh, I like this. I like this. It feels real good. And so it's when you do find that winner. And again, I was like, what is this funnel looking thing? Well, I've never seen anything like it, but it's a winner for her. And that's what matters. So I love that there's kind of a variety pack out there. That's really cool.
Right. Exactly. And you do have to get the buy-in from the child too, because a lot of times, especially if they're an older child and that grip is ingrained, you have to get their buy-in too, because, and that's my daughter, I'll tell you firsthand, if people saw her pencil grasp, they would be like, oh my gosh, you do handwriting? But I'm like, okay, she can achieve a correct functional grasp, but also the grasp that she uses may not be pretty, but it's functional.
Yeah.
The only thing we're running into now is that fatigue bit because she is getting older. So that's where she's starting to recognize, maybe I will try. One of my favorite pencil grips is the claw. I think it's called the writing claw. And it really perfectly positions those 3 working fingers. and she loves it. And so I'm like, okay, we're there now. We've got some motivation on our side.
That's awesome.
And that's fine. Because again, like you want that little piece of motivation, making it fun in order to get the outcome that you want.
Absolutely. Yeah. And in terms of buy-in, it may look like, hey, my hand's just real tired. I think I need something else. Like you mentioned with your daughter, for some of our kids, we do a lot of writing. We are bilingual. And so all their writing they do in English and then they do it in Spanish, which turns out to be a lot for little hands. I mean, we recognize it. But when they spell something wrong, I go, hey, you wrote that yesterday. Go back and look at yesterday's paper. And she goes, I can't read that. I can't read my letters. And I go, yes, maybe we should work on this handwriting then. She goes, yeah, I think that would be really helpful. So it's stuff like that, that when you have them do a little bit of a reflection, they'll usually come to.
We love doing that. Self-check and self-editing is a huge part of what we do and what we preach, because it not only is it just good practice to teach them to go back and, does something look right? And then that's how they learn. Then it sticks and it's okay, well, let's do that again and let's do that differently. And it's just a good life skill.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think everyone could benefit from a little editing about that email or whatever. Yeah, totally. I love it. Okay. Any success stories that you want to tell us about from Handwriting Solutions? Any kids that had particularly, tricky situations that, found a really good solution that came out of there? We've heard so many from your daughter, but any others?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's so many. I'm like, how do I choose? I'll give a couple just so that people can kind of see from different perspectives. So, currently we're working with a child who has had brain cancer. And so she's a very unique case because her brain was literally impacted by what she's been through. And just today I got a text from mom saying, oh my gosh, look at what she did at school today. Because we had to start at the very beginning of letter identification and recognition and those basic capital, like the lines, even just let's do basic lines and then let's turn those into capital letters. And it's been a journey over the past 6 months. And we know that she has made huge progress from where she was post-surgery. So we both were like almost in tears, like, oh my gosh, look at how far she's come. So, it's again, that's a unique case. I'll say I'm working with another child who is 13. So a lot of people think, they're in middle school, we're going to forget about handwriting, give them a computer. Fine. Okay, great. We can accommodate when necessary, but it is never too late to remediate as well, because our brains are plastic and we can learn and grow. And so this was kind of her first intervention for writing. And the progress that she made over, I believe we worked with her for 9 months. She's taking a break right now to focus on her dyslexia remediation, but she was able to hold a pencil without discomfort, which is huge. Actually, she uses a pen now, which is really cool. They have these erasable pens. So for a child she had some sensory aversions and it was hard. You have to have a certain amount of pressure to push a pencil. Yeah. So with a pen, it glides a little bit easier. She can erase it. So that perfection fear, is eliminated. And it just worked for her. And then just explicitly teaching formation also taught her cursive. And that blew her mind because print was frustrating for her. And she's like, oh my goodness, do we really have to do this again? Great. Let's just shake it up. Let's dive into cursive. And it was beautiful, amazing, because it was again smoother. She could do it very fluidly with that erasable pen. So that was amazing to see. Again, 13 years old, never too late. And then, I think about a kiddo who we really had a very short stint with him just this summer I think we worked with him for about a month and a half this summer. He did our handwriting camp virtually. And then mom said, you know what? I think we need just a few more sessions to really get this in. And he's doing wonderful. She already emailed us and said, school is like, what happened this summer kind of thing. So it also doesn't have to be a long remediation too. Summer break is a perfect, opportunity to kind of hit it really hard and intensive in the summer, but sometimes that doesn't work for families too. So then we kind of have a once once a week kind of model as well. But I mean, it's just, obviously I'm super passionate about this. So I don't want you to leave without having a success story. Like, if you come to me, yes, we're going to make progress, and we're going to leave with a success story, because that's what I want for all of my kiddos.
Yeah, that's huge. Well, it's very clear. So congratulations on that. That's amazing. And I think, thank you for mentioning like the pen. That is a super simple, switch that made, it seems like, all the difference for this girl. And I think for a lot of teachers, we might say, no pens, no pens, no pens. And yeah, there are erasable pens now, friends. It's 2023. Like, it's okay. And so there are so many other accommodations. Could we call it an accommodation? I mean, just a sub, maybe, if we don't want to use the A word, but like, it's a really important thing to be flexible enough. And for homeschoolers, we're always doing this because, hey, my 10-year-old didn't want to get out of bed this morning. So she did everything from her bed, which was amazing. We make that accommodation. Why wouldn't we make the accommodation for the writing implement too?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. I like to say those are like our low tech accommodations. We can change pencils or to pens, to pencil grips, to paper, like different types of lined paper, dry erase board versus paper. I mean, those are like those easy, automatic, low tech accommodations that we can use all the time, and that teachers can easily implement in the classroom. That's what I love, is that they're just so easy, and you can try it with anybody that's in your classroom if you're a teacher.
I love it. Let's go to little kids real quick. I do have the cursive question in mind that I'm going to ask in just a second, but let's go to littles for a second, because with a preschooler, we're starting to work. Their hands are not ready for full on writing and perfect penmanship. We know this. However, they do love to draw. They do love some good Play-Doh time. They like some rice. We put cornstarch and balloons in their stress balling their lives away. And so there's just so much we can do to prep their little hands. Any tips or, pre-writing suggestions you would give to those with littles at home?
So I just posted about this on my Instagram, which I love. I'm like, here's a tip, play. And parents are like, oh, it's that easy? Yes, play. Go outside and have them climb trees and do monkey bars. And those are building up those solid core stability muscles, which are essential for writing. So play. But also, like you mentioned, Play-Doh, clay, beading, any kind of clothespins, any kind of strengthening activities. The more access to those type of manipulative play, the better, because that's building up all those little hand muscles, which is essential for writing. And then you can start kind of just letter play. Like I know you mentioned like letter sounds and stuff. Let's just play with letters, like the little block letters or the little magnetic letters. We don't have to write them. We don't want to write them, to be honest, because a lot of times these kids who maybe 3 or 4 years old, the handwriting is being pushed on them. They're going to develop poor habits, which in the long run lead to them also coming to me for help, because they've developed these poor habits. It's not fluid. It's not automatic. So, but just basic letter play to learn the letter identification and letter sound is fun. And then when they're ready to kind of start making some lines and like coloring, and you'll notice when they're coloring and they kind of start saying, oh, I'm going to make a shape, or a circle, or make a person or whatever, you can incorporate fun little pre-writing, without saying, oh, let's write a capital B, but let's just see if you can imitate a line. There's a developmental progression of we learn to write a vertical line first, and then a horizontal line, and then a circle and a cross, and then we get to diagonals and triangles, but that's really not till like 5-6 years old. So there's a lot that has to happen before if you think about like the letter A, well, you've got diagonals there. If you're not getting that till 5 or 6 years old, we're not ready to start writing letters, right?
Yeah.
But building up those foundational skills, building up the strength, the fine motor skills, all of that, and then just making it fun, because it's huge. It should be fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm remembering 3 little like sensory type things that have really helped us. One are like these Melissa and Doug stamps, like the letter stamps. So we've got upper and lowercase, and then often we'll just have them, hey, let's stamp all these A's over. Hey, are any of them standing up? And then they're looking at positioning, or are they all hanging out upside down? Ha, 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 they're all upside down. tomorrow, let's try again and let's try to make them all stand up, or let's all make them in this corner standing up, that sort of thing. So that was really fun for our kids. Also, the wall behind me is just a wall that we painted black, but it's a chalkboard. And so we would often write letters and then dip pom-poms and either use like a clothespin or just their fingers in water. And then they would have to erase the letters by using water, which was really fun just to get them kind of following those lines. And then one that we use a little later on when they're doing like spelling and they just need like an extra spelling that's not writing, we would use either a finger or a chopstick in a cake pan filled with rice. Flour is a little bit messier, but that's an option too. But that's just a fun one. And then they shake it and it's erased and it's just a little bit more fun. So just giving that choice, giving that discovery, the texture, it's all a little bit more exciting than just the pencil.
Right. So two things there, the writing on the chalkboard. So that is wonderful because that's a vertical surface. And so they're writing bigger usually on that vertical surface, which triggers different parts of the brain and kind of helps with that motor memory. So that is fantastic. Anytime I can have a child write on a vertical surface, it also is working on strengthening their shoulders and then providing some stability so that they can isolate their fingers. So that is wonderful. And then I think the other piece you spoke to was that multisensory learning. So, you know, research is showing that it's a combination of building up those foundational skills. And then we're not going to do pencil to paper all the time. We're going to do multisensory, you know, so like you said, with the rice or the sand. I live close to the beach. So I always tell my in-person clients, like, go take a stick to the beach and practice writing in the sand. Again, you're usually writing those letters a little bit bigger, but it's also giving that sensory feedback that helps ingrain that in the memory and that muscle memory and that motor memory, which is really going to help with retention and all of that. And again, makes it fun. So I think I love both of those key points that you pointed out there.
Oh, good. All right. Well, all right. The littles, we're getting them working toward their letter formation. Then we get them writing, perhaps in print, and then the cursive. Do we teach cursive? Is cursive necessary? Is cursive gone? We could just type, right? Like, what do we do with cursive? What would you recommend, Kelly?
We teach it, obviously. Okay. I know for a minute there, schools in the US anyway had pulled cursive from the curriculum. And what we're finding out and what the research is showing is, no, we need to get that back in the curriculum. Why? Because research shows that teaching and learning cursive in grades 3 and 4 impacts their spelling and impacts their written composition. And so Dr. Berninger is the researcher who found this. And so it's so critical because it is literally impacting their spelling and their written composition when they learn and when they're using cursive, which is just really cool, right? And then, you know, kind of going back to the story of the 13-year-old client that I worked with, it's also giving them an alternate avenue. So if print has been really hard and really frustrating for them, we're teaching them a brand new way to write that's taking maybe the pressure off and that frustration. And then it's new. And so many of the kids that I teach cursive, they're like, it's the fancy way to write. So even that's motivating, right? And then the other piece too is with teaching them how to write cursive, you're teaching them how to read cursive. So it's just a basic life skill to be able to read and write cursive. So I am a huge proponent, but I really think that research stands out for me as to why it's important. Again, though, if you're a middle schooler hasn't learned cursive yet, it's not too late. I mean, I even have, it's funny, like a lot of 20-year-olds now are like, well, I never learned cursive. I don't know how to read cursive. And I'm like, we got you. Like we can still do this. So, but yeah, no, it's critical and the research is showing it, which is just really phenomenal.
Well, and I can see that connection between spelling. You have to plan ahead. I mean, the connections between, I'm going to connect this with actually Arabic. I took a semester of Arabic in college, and there are literally 3 alphabets because each letter has an initial, a middle, and an ending formation. And sometimes they're real different. That was so hard for me, but then it makes sense because in cursive, it is very similar. There are different connections for different letters. And so of course you're going to have to anticipate, you're going to have to think ahead. That makes a lot of sense. Wow. Very cool.
Right. Yeah. And then also, I know you mentioned keyboarding a little bit too. So a lot of times we just say, well, we'll just have them keyboard if their handwriting is messy. Well, guess what? You have to explicitly instruct that too, or else they're going to be like doing the hunt and peck. Right. So again, I think of writing and composition as there are really key. It's print, it's cursive, and it's keyboarding. And our kids really need to know all three. Because it's going to, again, activate different parts of the brain. It's going to serve them better in the long run and those life skills. And they just really need to be able to do all three.
Yeah. For perhaps some of the families who are homeschooling and they're looking and choosing curriculum, something that I sometimes bring up is like, hey, look and make sure in that 3rd, 4th, 5th grade textbook, are there passages or diary entries or whatever the kid is reading, are they in cursive? Because they do need to start to read. That's something that sometimes gets overlooked. I like to create a lot of writing resources, writing prompts, writing journals, that sort of thing. And I give the option of printing them, but also giving them a digital option, because sometimes that it's just a slog. It's just a slog to get kids writing. And yes, they're going to need to, in some instances, though, it's just easier for the novelty to say, hey, yeah, type yours in there, and then I'll check it from my computer because it's Google Slides and we can look at the same thing at the same time and edit together. And that's just super cool to them. But you're right, those keyboarding skills are super duper important too, because efficiency, long run, just good human skills to have of being able to type efficiently. So yeah. I love it. Oh, Kelli, this has been so helpful. How can people continue learning from you? How can they get in touch with you afterward? Could you share a few places where they can keep learning from you?
Absolutely. So website is handwritingsolutions.org. And then they can also find me on Facebook, Handwriting Solutions, is Instagram, Handwriting Solutions. I'm on LinkedIn as well, if anybody hangs out there. Those are the best way. And then also just shoot me an email. Kelli, Kelli at handwritingsolutions.org. And then I know you said you were going to post the Calendly link, which I'm always happy when that pops up on my calendar, because I'm like, oh, this is going to be so fun, because we end up having and let me say, it's 15 minutes. Rarely do we like stick to 15 minutes. My fault. Yeah. But it's just so helpful, I think, for parents and for teachers. I open that up to anybody. I have other therapists that call me too, and that say like, I need help with this handwriting piece. So those are probably the best ways, but I'm always open and available, because I just see the need so much. Yeah. To help these kids.
Thank you. Thank you for your generosity. I appreciate that. Last question, something that we always ask here is, what are you loving about your role in the education space right now?
Oh my gosh. I mean, it just, so we're really, I started this as an in-person type deal, and I quickly pivoted to expanding that to virtual, because I'm realizing that so many kids are in areas that don't have access to quality services. And that, I think, is what is the most exciting for me, is that I'm serving kids that truly do not have access and that need this so much. And now we have 4 tutors that work with me, so we can kind of hit all the time zones and really make it the best for the family as well. But it's game changing, because so many parents come to me and say, well, we did OT and that didn't really help much, or like that helped, but then they discharged us, and then school's not helping, and like we don't know where to go, we don't know like who helps, what do we do? So just being that resource and that tool that I didn't have is huge, and I think that's what makes me the most excited about Handwriting Solutions.
That's so cool. It sounds like you're filling an important gap. So thank you for what you're doing. And for the rest of you who are watching, nobody's told you yet today, thank you for doing what you're doing. It's very important. And we'll see you out there. Happy teaching.